Hello, and welcome to another UFOB interview. Today we have David Parker, who 26 years ago was a witness to the Phoenix Lights. The craft was seen from Las Vegas to Phoenix. While there were reports of a pilot training going on by the military and a group of A-10 Warthogs over Tucson, and that being the cause for the first group of lights, and another report of flares dropped in southwest Arizona being the cause of a second group of lights, witnesses know what they saw that day. They reported seeing a boomerang or a carpenter square-shaped craft with 5 lights on the belly of the craft. David saw something similar as well, but he says he was far closer to it than many of the reports. David also has had a few other events of high strangeness in his life that he'll share with us as well. But before we bring David on, let's get the team on and say hello. Hey, Adam, how you doing?
Great. Yeah, always good to be here.
Great. Well, let's say hello to David here. David, how are you doing today?
Hey, nice to meet you.
Well, it's great to have you on, and thank you very much for coming on. So what everyone's going to want to hear first is your Phoenix Light experience. So please let us hear your experience.
That was absolutely life-changing for me, and it's going to be 26 years ago tomorrow.
It's crazy.
How odd that we're doing this interview at this time.
Yeah.
And, back in 1997, I lived in Phoenix, but I worked in East Mesa, Arizona. I was a hospice nurse for 17 years. And at the time I was working at an inpatient unit. We had 10 beds. We took care of 10 end-of-life patients at a time. So I did 12-hour day shifts. We had 12-hour night shift. Staff too, and the night shift nurse was just a tad late, so I had to stay just a little bit longer, but actually that put me in the best place at the best time to have the sighting that I had. So I was going home from East Mesa into Phoenix, heading west. We have a freeway there, I-60, which was under construction for like a decade. They would widen it, and then they'd stop, and they'd widen it again, and it was always under construction. It seemed for a long time, and at that time it was all dirt. And every time you came to an overpass over the freeway, you had to exit the dirt freeway, go up a dirt ramp, go over the dirt overpass, and then back down, and kept so about every mile you had to get off the freeway and get back on it. And I was driving through Tempe on the way to Phoenix when I was on the overpass, and there was this huge mound of dirt from the construction site. And I had to drive not only over the overpass, but on this huge mound, this elevated area of dirt. And it was so elevated that the nearby street light, which is normally, 30 feet in the air or so, whatever, was about almost parallel with me. It was about 4 o'clock behind my right shoulder. So I'm up there on the dirt getting ready to go back down. And I just happened to look out the window of my truck, and there's this huge boomerang thing coming towards me, floating in the air, nice and slow. So I slammed on my brakes, but I kept the headlights on, turned the headlights on bright, got out of my truck. As it was coming up to me, it maybe was about 30 feet over my head. And as it came up, I could see clearly that was a boomerang shape, like a banana. Bananas are kind of bent, like about that angle. The tip of the left wing was the closest to me. And in fact, as it came up over my head, had the craft fallen down to the ground, I could have taken 1 or 2 steps and kicked the tip of the left wing.
Wow.
It was rounded on the tip, and I see drawings and people make it a point, and it wasn't. It was rounded vertically and horizontally. I could see a little bit going up as it was rounded going up. The whole bottom of the craft was covered in what looked like thumbprint indentations. I remember my mom, when I was a kid, my mom had a Tupperware container to carry deviled eggs around, and had this little indentation that, half of a deviled egg would sit in and not slide around. That's what it looked like. And it was casting shadows, and I could see the shadows. Yeah, my horrible drawing.
Well, it's something for the viewers to see.
Oh, um, very similar to this. They weren't in rows, but they were all vertical, going from the tip towards the inside of the craft as far as I could see.
Mhm.
With the street light shining on it, shining, my headlights on it, I could see shadow
Okay.
in the little divots, whatever those were inside the bottom of the craft. And then the light from the craft also was producing a shadow going the other way. It was about a gunmetal gray. It was about 80% matte finish. There was a slight reflection to the color. I'd say about 20% reflection.
Mhm.
It was smooth. There was no rivets. There was no bolts. There was no seam. And as it kind of curved, the little bit I could see as it curved up around the edge, around the tip of the edge, there were no little indentations there. It was just solely on the bottom of the craft. The nearest light to me was very concerning. It was an opening. I'm seeing it at an angle,
Mhm.
and so it kind of looked oval, but I'm sure it was round.
Mhm.
I would trying to.
Well, I can put mine up if you want to see mine. I mean, I don't think
Yeah,
mine's much
I was
better.
right at the tip.
Yeah.
So, when I wanted to see the tip of the craft as it was coming up, I had to look straight up.
Mhm.
Oh, that's nice. That's prettier.
Well,
they were
but the divots are in rows, and you say they weren't in
yeah,
perfect
they were.
rows.
It's nicer than mine.
I tried.
Um, so to see the tip of the craft, I had to look straight up.
Mhm.
But the rest of the craft, I didn't even have to move my head. It was so low, and I was so elevated on this pile of dirt
Mhm.
that all I had to do was just lift my eyes a little bit. Oops, and I could see it.
Mhm.
So the opening had going about a couple inches, had a silver rim on the inside of it, just a few inches up, maybe a couple inches thick. And then out of that flowed what looked like lava. It looked like the stuff that comes out of a lava lamp. My drawing is horrible, but
It's
this
fun.
it looked like liquid fire, just like lava, and it was orange crush orange. And
Yeah.
as it poured down, it would kind of slow down and almost thicken and turn into big drips.
Hmm.
And as the drips would kind of drip down, the part that was still kind of coming down would thin out just a bit. And where it would thin out, it was yellow. And
Hmm.
I remember when I was a kid, we used to have taffy pulls. I mean, you pull, orange taffy or whatever. And when you pull it, where it gets thin, it gets to a lighter color. So it was like when it was concentrated and in big drips, it was orange. But when it was thin and kind of stretched out, it was yellow. And I had heard other people say it looked like a yellow orange swirl. Well, I can see where they got that. And as the drip would come down, and there would be, 5, 6, 7 big drips of this, it would stop. And then it looked like it fell up. It wasn't like it was sucked back up into the opening of the craft. It looked like it fell up. So if you boil something on the stove and the boils pop out of the pan and kind of go up in the air and stop for a fraction of a second and then fall back down in the pan, that's what it looked like, but upside down. So the stuff came down, stopped, went back up. More was coming down, stopped, went back up, like a lava lamp. Some of that stuff would drip up and come,
I,
fall down as it cools. And
so when you said that other people described something similar, did you hear of other people describing that, like lava coming down? Okay, neither have I. I haven't.
I've never heard him say that, but they were looking directly up into it. Most people were looking straight up. I was so close, and I was at such a. I was looking sideways at it. I was looking horizontal at the bottom of the craft, not
Mhm.
so much looking up. I had to
Mhm.
look up to see the tip, but for the rest of the craft, this thing was at least a mile wide.
Wow.
So I'm horizontal. So
Right.
I'm seeing it sideways. And I think my viewpoint was different than everybody else's.
Yeah, I can't imagine seeing
If I
something.
Yeah, if I wasn't on the hill, maybe I
Yeah.
wouldn't have seen it that way,
Yeah, and so you're saying, it was about a mile wide. I think of
I guess.
the only thing to compare it to for me is an aircraft carrier, and you're saying this thing was probably way bigger than an aircraft carrier.
Looking up, it was basically 90-degree angle between the horizon and the tip of the craft, and that thing took up 75 degrees of that 90-degree area. So I don't know if there's a way to calculate how wide it was.
I'm sure
And
there is.
I was sure I could hit it with a rock. That's how close it was. And I actually thought about it. I thought, "Wow, I wonder what it sounds like." Is it tear? Is it gonna, ding? And then I thought, well, there might be consequences for this. So
Yeah,
I didn't. But I actually breathe, because I'm on this construction site and there's just dirt and rocks everywhere.
yeah.
So that's how close I was.
So for being that close, was there sound?
Nothing. Absolutely no sound.
Yeah.
And there was no odor, there was no mist, there was no wind. I was very concerned with this stuff because I was so close, and I could actually, see the glow actually on the ground and on me from the light coming down from whatever this stuff was. I thought, I'm going to burn. I'm a nurse. You think about things like that. And
Yeah.
I thought, should I get back in my truck? Should I get behind the truck? Should I run? What should I do? But
Yeah.
when I felt absolutely no heat, no, if it was propulsion, I don't know what it was for. It didn't blow any dust in my face.
Right.
My eyes didn't burn, my ears didn't ring, my skin wasn't tingling. I'm a nurse.
Oh, yeah, no feeling like static electricity or anything? Nothing like that?
Nothing. My hair didn't fuzz.
Wow. Yeah.
I felt absolutely nothing from that thing.
Mhm.
And and as it passed over, and I'm just standing there, and it glided. It took its time, just meandering, across the sky. And as it was going off to the left, farther south, behind it was this colorful mist, like rainbow colors and sparkly. And I was expecting something, to fall on me from that, but it didn't. There was no odor, no
There
mist, tingle.
So behind it was a colorful mist?
Yes. Yeah,
And so
kind of
so
wave.
how far behind it did it trail? Did the mist?
Maybe about 20 feet.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. And it was only behind it. It wasn't in front of it at all. It wasn't underneath it. So whatever was behind it, which I couldn't make out because it was dark.
Mhm.
You know, from the bottom, I had the glow of the craft. I had my headlights and I had the
Mhm.
street light.
Mhm.
But as it was moving off, it was kind of out of the street light glow.
Okay,
And that stuff just kept pouring down.
did you ever see it stop?
No,
Wow.
no, it didn't stop. It just kept heading farther and farther south. The
Um,
only effect it had on me, and I don't know if it was me doing it to myself, seeing this monster-sized craft gently floating by, or was it something from the craft itself? I have no idea, but I was overwhelmed with like a feeling of gratitude. And normally, when I think about this or talk about this, I break down in tears. It
Wow.
was that emotional,
Wow.
and
Wow.
there we go.
You're just so thankful that you were able to see something so
Was it?
otherworldly.
Was it? Prior to this course, I was a hospice nurse. You got to be a pretty nice person to be a hospice nurse anyway. Why, when I got on the road, I had my moments. I would just be a terror driving and honking at people and tailgating them and then pulling in front and I had my moments of some anger or being in line somewhere and getting frustrated. From that moment on, now 26 years tomorrow, I've never honked my horn. I let people cut ahead of me.
Wow.
I happy 24/7. I sit at home smiling for like no reason.
Wow.
My personality changed. I became
Wow.
like a super nice guy. My coworkers all noticed it. My friends all noticed it, and it's been consistent. It's not like I'm good and bad days. It's
Yeah.
consistent 24/7 now for 26 years.
Wow. What a
And
life-changing experience.
so what caused that? I don't know. I don't want to read into it that they
Yeah.
zapped me with, a kindness ray or something. But maybe I did it, maybe they did it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, nuts and bolts, you were thankful and felt some amazing gratitude for being able to see something so special that not many other people get to see. So I can see that in itself being, excuse me, a life changer. Um, but what did you tell some of those friends that noticed this difference why?
Um, they actually noticed it before I did. And I went back to work the next day. It's like, oh my God, did you see that? Did you hear about that? And it was on the news and people are talking about it. And it's like, oh, I saw it. I saw it. I'm telling everybody. And I'm trying not to be too happy. I'm a hospice nurse. I mean, we got to be sensitive to all our family members.
Yeah.
And we had like a little living room where they could sit, and we had the TV on all the time. But it kept coming on the news. And, my coworkers and my friends noticed, you're different, especially the ones that I drove with. It's like, let people go ahead of me, go in the grocery store, let people cut in line. And they brought it up. It's like, yeah, I think you're right. Something,
But
I
but
grew.
they brought it up, but did you say, yeah, well, ever since I saw that
Yeah,
the crack
yeah, I did.
and
They noticed it too. Yeah, it was that.
okay. What were
It
their
was
responses?
obvious.
Did some of them see it or
Mm. Nobody did. They looked at me a little strange at first. Of course, it's on the news. And then
Mhm.
when the governor came out with that guy in the rubber suit,
Yeah.
um, then everybody started laughing at me, and I shut my mouth. I learned the power of shame.
Mhm.
I learned how important it is never to shame anyone because you have no idea, how that's going to stagnate somebody in their life. So I held on to my experience for a long time,
Mhm.
and didn't even talk about it. But I still got the benefits. I got the
Right.
effect. I knew there was something more. I don't
Yeah,
know
well,
where they're from. I don't know who's sitting at the steering wheel and who's got their foot on the pedal.
right.
Uh, Somebody brilliant was flying a huge craft.
Or a whole bunch of people. I mean, a mile wide, how many people could have, or beings, or whatever could have been in there? We don't know. We don't know if that was military. We don't know if it was extraterrestrial. We don't
No
know.
idea.
But what we do know is you saw
I saw it.
something,
I
and
saw it, and it was bizarre. I mean, this liquid fire, this lava, and no sound. I don't know. I don't want to. I don't know what it was. It was
yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yeah, I can't even imagine.
I think too, just the response from the government after just making a mockery of this, really the whole situation kind of speaks for itself. Where a lot of people were concerned, a lot of people did witness this, and obviously, as you can hear, very close up. And I remember seeing years ago just the actual footage, and I couldn't believe it. And I was just looking on YouTube to try and find it, and was able to find. Just like a quick, like a couple stills of it, because I can't find the actual full conference. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but I'll link it in the chat right now. But yeah, there's just like that one still where I think the governor or whoever the official is in the suit, and it's like, why would you do that for a very serious thing that people are very concerned about? And if you did witness the phenomena in real time, it's quite magical, as you can hear. So it's just bizarre. Maybe we can link that one little still in there, because it just doesn't make any sense to
Yeah,
make a mockery of that.
I'm working on that.
And then how? Oh, of course, back then we had a shopping mall called the Mercado, and there was some indictments going on with Fife Symington, our governor, at the time. So he was under some political heat. So who knows? I mean, I don't know why he did it, but of course later he came out and recanted all of that. and said he actually saw it.
Yeah, it's like, who told him to do that? You know, that's what makes me wonder.
But also
get him on next.
Well, he's been interviewed plenty of times, but it also speaks to just what has been going on for 70 years about the shaming and ridicule and making people just look like they're crazy. And you experienced that firsthand once.
That was interesting, and I was surprised to myself that that I allowed that to have so much control and power over me. That was an eye opener on the topic of shame. I remember, who was the guy that used to do videos on toxic shame? Oh, I forget his name. I can't think of who it was. He wrote quite a few books, and I used to read them. I thought it was very interesting, but boy, to use it as a tactic, it's powerful. You know, what a shame to shame somebody. But
your class.
Oops, I'm sorry, I'm muted. But I was going to say it is. I mean, 70 years of shaming and ridicule to keep this stuff a secret is what has been happening, and you were front line right there. So here we have one of the stills or videos from 26 years ago. It does not seem like it was that long ago. And I think another, let's see, there's another, I think this one's a recreation, and there's another, but nonetheless, that was the video. There was just lights in the sky for many people, and you saw more than lights in the sky. You saw.
I could have hit it with a rock. Literally, I could have hit it with a rock. And people say, "Well, why didn't you take a picture?" Well, you know, back then we still had film cameras, and in Arizona, you do not get in the habit of carrying a camera around, even though it's the cool time of the year. I mean, it's blazing for 8 months out of the year. You leave it in the camera in the car, and you know you got pudding. Mm-hmm. So, and if I did have a camera in the car, I wouldn't have taken my eyes off of that thing. I wouldn't have bothered to go get that. It was amazing. That thing was huge. It was like winning the lottery. I felt like I won the lottery.
And from the moment you saw it and you pulled over, it never stopped moving. It was just slowly moving by you.
Just taking its time.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, hey Dave, how you doing? You know, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
what is it? Why was it there? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it was seen from all the way from Las Vegas down through Phoenix and I think Tucson. Actually, I do have a map of the sightings of where people saw it here. Get to it. Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, so people saw it from Las Vegas all the way down through Phoenix. Yeah, I guess the sighting stopped at Tucson, and of course it looks like it's coming from Area 51. So who knows? But speculation all over the place. But either way, yeah, those were the sightings. And you were on Tempe. Let's see. Here's Phoenix, Flagstaff.
It's right next to Phoenix. It's a suburb of Phoenix.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, so you were in that mix there.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I was almost in Phoenix.
Okay.
Actually, I might have actually been Phoenix, but because all the construction signs were down, and you know, I didn't think to focus on what exit I was on. You know, especially afterwards. It's like, you know, I barely remember driving home. But I stayed and watched it out of sight.
That's what I was going to ask. You watched it go out of sight. How long did it take for it to go out of sight?
It seemed like forever.
Okay.
But it couldn't have been, you know,
because it sounds like it was going slow enough to where it could have been a good 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. And I remember kind of, you know, looking around, hoping somebody else would be driving and stopping too. I wanted to share this with somebody. And there was nobody. Everybody who was since did not drive on the freeway torn up like that. You know, they drove on the off streets. You know, no one was coming. I wanted to share it and say, look, you and I are looking at this together.
Yeah.
But it's me.
And I want you to describe again the lava look. Like you were looking just slightly vertically, or just
I don't know if I can see it on my camera. It was just like I could keep my head still and just roll my eyes up and see the whole bottom of the craft.
Yeah.
That's how close I was to the bottom,
Yeah.
and to all of it.
Yeah.
To see the tip, I had to go like that.
Yeah.
But it poured out of this opening, and I saw the other ones too, the other openings. Of course, I was focused on the one closest to me because I thought I'm going to get burned. This stuff's going to scald me. And so that was my only concern. That was my only fear. I wasn't terrified, wasn't frightened. Had some safety issues, but and also I didn't want to fall on me.
Yeah.
But the opening, inside the opening, maybe about that far, and that far up was a silver tube, a silver lining around the outside of the opening.
Oh, that was the gray or silver.
Yeah, it's like the bottom was like a gunmetal gray.
Okay.
And then going up in the tube, it looked a little dark, and then there was a silver lining, and it was maybe 2 inches thick, and it came out in kind of a sharp edge. I could clearly see that it was like a lining inside whatever the opening was of whatever that stuff was that came out.
Yeah.
And then it just flowed. It wasn't fire. It looked like a liquid, and it was like a very viscous, thick liquid like lava. And I've never seen lava in person, but I've seen it on TV, and it was more drippy and sticky.
Well, so I think honey would be a better would honey, because I mean you had pictures of honey that you sent me, so if that makes
it glowed like lava.
Oh, okay.
So the light was coming from the lava looking stuff,
Okay.
And there was light coming from out of the tube, I'm assuming maybe from the lava stuff. But I see other people, when they draw the craft, it looked like a big light bulb in the bottom. But it wasn't. It was an opening. The light was an actual opening. And briefly, as it was coming up from the other lights, I could see this stuff dripping out of them too. But I focused on the one closest to me because what's going to happen to David?
Yeah, and the actual light. So there were 5 lights. 5 lights. Did you see 5 lights?
I believe there was 5. I believe there was.
Yeah. Okay. Now those 5 lights. Now the one that you were looking at, there was the lava-like stuff coming out of it. But could you actually? Was it too bright to see what was actually in there, where it was emanating from, or?
It was farther, because I was right by the tip. So the first light was farther in, so I couldn't see up in it as much as if I was right underneath the light. I was just underneath the very left wing tip. So
so you couldn't really see up in it. Yeah.
So I could see a little bit on the other side, the distal side.
And just for fun, I'll show your drawing again, just to show kind of how it looked for you. And yeah, as you said, you say it was thick on the outside, but it would get thin in the middle.
When it would stretch. Stretch out. And then slow down, and then stop, and then go back up as more was coming down.
I just can't imagine what that could have been for. What or why?
Someone asked me, was it plasma? I don't know what plasma looks like. So,
yeah. Well, I believe I could be wrong. I'll get corrected on this, but freon light, that's a plasma, I believe. What the freon is, and argon and all those, that would be a plasma, just a glowing gas.
It's just supercharged gas, pretty much, as plasma.
Yeah. But it looked viscous to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a syrup, or like I say, honey.
Yeah.
It looks like a lava lamp upside down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because it reminds me of I want to say his last name is Laviolette, but he did a conference at the Secret Space Program stuff many years back, talking about the TRBs and the triangle shaped craft with the 3 lights on each corner, and saying that he believed those were like some kind of microwave propulsion. But this, why would that be? I mean, that is such a strange occurrence, or to see that. I mean,
If it was propulsion, I would guess, and of course I don't understand
Yeah.
stuff, that it would be blowing,
Hmm.
dust and dirt, especially on a construction site. It was just, there's dust and dirt everywhere.
Yeah.
Nothing blew in my eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my idea would be, even if it was a military craft or extraterrestrial, the whole point is anti-gravitics. So you would think that the propulsion system would be separate, and not making some weird viscous type of lava looking stuff coming out of it. That's just so strange. It makes me think of Cash Landrum, right, Rem? Didn't stuff drip out of that? But that seemed like it was more of a nuclear a reaction issue, because stuff dripped
like
down on.
plume.
Yeah, it was like a plume that dropped, and they had
But
radioactive issues with Cash Landrum. But luckily, you have had no effects.
I had nothing, and I probably should have at the time, gone and got checked for radiation just in case. But I had no loss of skin or vision, no hearing problems, no blistered lips, no hypertension.
Just a change in attitude.
Boy, I did. I'm a better driver.
You are no longer a road rager. Not that I'm guessing you ever were, but that's.
I wonder if you, did anybody ask to make an animation of it, like a computer animation?
There's somebody I just ran into at a MUFON meeting, and he's working on a book on famous UFOs. His name's Ben something, and he's a 3D artist, and then he's recreating a famous craft, and then showing them at different angles and how they look differently. So he asked me if I would help him on the animation. I said, well, yeah, I'd love to. So I gave him my number. I haven't heard anything yet, but hopefully he will. Hopefully, something with my sketches.
Well, if you ever do, we definitely ask him if it's okay if we can throw that on our YouTube site and connect it to this interview.
I'm looking
for people later on. That'd be great. I mean, because otherwise, my little pictures are I feel equally as non-artistic as you feel yours are. But yeah,
the craft gave me gratitude, but not art.
Yeah. And again, as you watched it, just and I've heard other descriptions of them, kind of like almost like floating on ice, just the way it moved. It was just like just floating on ice, or like those air hockey games. The disc floats on the cushion of air, and it
didn't speed up, it didn't slow down, it wasn't jerking. It wasn't nothing changed.
And it's
lights like a turn signal.
And behind it, would you say behind it on the back edge of the whole craft, you saw this little?
It was in intervals. It was in intervals, like maybe there was an opening somewhere with something coming out.
Thinking about it, would you think the intervals matched the lights that were underneath?
No. It was a different substance. It looked more twinkling and more mist-like. It was definitely not a thick, viscous whatever. It was and it kind of wove. It was kind of wavy, and then just dissipated.
Okay. Did you hear any reports? I didn't read any about people describing that. I remember a child describing, or a young boy. He was probably 9 or 10. You may have seen it too, but I remember him describing it, seeing it going over them. But for them, it was more kind of like I forget the wavy effect on the highway.
I heard something about that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that at all. But then they might have been at a different angle than I was. And plus I had that street light, which was shining down the ground and reflecting up. Plus I had my brights on. So,
which also talks for how, or goes for how close you were to this, or how close it was to you.
Right. What close to each other. I was elevated, it was low.
That's just fascinating.
I hit it. I still think, what if I did hit it with a rock? Would it have poked a hole in it? Would it, would they have zapped me? I don't know. I mean, but I think I know I did the right thing by not, but I'm a guy. We throw rocks, you know.
I know, I was gonna say, but man,
Yeah.
would have been nice to just chuck a rock at it and see what it sounded like. Or you may have even seen the rock bounce back against some magnetic force field or something,
Right.
and that would have been even more intriguing.
Horrible. I have shards into Nurse David. You know, who knows? Who knows? But I do a little bit of regret.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Do that. So that was fun. It was interesting. A few years later, at the time, I'd never heard of MUFON. I didn't know there was any sort of UFO groups around, so I didn't know who to go to with this. And it wasn't until years later, and I had 2 other sightings, I started getting on the net. I mean, other than going to the police, I had no idea where to go voice what I'm experiencing. So when I finally found MUFON, it's like, oh my God, others know this and know about this. And it was a huge relief.
Yeah. And you said you had 2 other sightings. Were those the camping?
Those are my camping trips.
Okay. Well, before we get into those, Adam, Rem, if you guys have any questions?
I was wondering, did you have contact with Dr. Lynne Kitei also?
Years later.
Okay.
And it was weird. I think we kind of almost worked together at the time because she was a physician and I was a nurse. So and she used to be on a kids show. She did doctor episodes on kids shows. So I knew her. I had no idea she was doing any of this work until, 12, 15 years later.
She was doing work with on a kids show, and then she also did this. I mean, did ufology?
She would do kids' health segments on a local kids show. And she would go on as a doctor and talk to kids and teach them about health. And I mean, so she was kind of a local celebrity.
Oh, okay.
We all kind of knew her. She had a wonderful segment, a great educator for children. So,
and what did you have to do with her? Did you?
I think we almost worked together in hospice because she was a physician, I was a nurse. So I was on one shift and she was on another at that time. And then years later, when I found out about MUFON, they said, "Oh, you got to meet Dr. Kitei." I think I know her. Yeah. So we have an annual event every year. It's going to be next Sunday in Scottsdale, where we play her documentary, and they have a couple witnesses. And I'm going to be speaking at that one too.
Oh, great! Yeah, great. Well, I hope they record it so we can.
They tried last year, and then the recording didn't work. So.
Oh, bummer. Right. Well, that's too bad.
So
so did you ever actually talk to her about your event?
Yes. I spoke last year at her event, and the year before we had COVID, so that didn't happen.
Okay.
So, yes.
And have you since then met other people that's? Go ahead.
Shortly after this happened, and I was later I was working in a hospital, and I happened to run into a retired ranger from the Navajo Nation, and the topic came up and we were talking about it, and he said that told me that 2 days prior to the Phoenix Lights, that there were quite a few craft up on the reservation, and he said there were so many that his neighbors actually took their furniture out of the house and moved to the front yard, watch all the craft, and some of them were actually landing, and they could see people get in and out. So,
are you kidding? Wow. What part of Arizona is that? On which reservation?
That'd be north eastern, the Navajos.
Because
there's a couple rangers still that are actually talking about it a little bit. I don't know if they had that experience with the neighbors this guy did. But, that was great to hear that for me, because this is before I heard about MUFON. It's like, thanks for letting me know I'm not crazy.
Oh, yeah.
He said that they decided not to report it because they didn't want a bunch of white people coming onto their land.
I can understand.
I can see that.
And if I remember correctly, they've also been seeing that for thousands of years as well.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's like nothing to them.
Yeah.
Instead of panicking, they're pulling furniture out and watching it.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, I've heard some of the old stories of the shamans going and talking and meeting with them and learning more.
And it's weird because my dad had something to do with UFOs, and his dad, my grandfather, saw one and reported it to a local newspaper in 1919. So
Oh, wow.
third generation on my father's side to get to see.
And that's just sightings, though. There had no close contact or anything.
My dad, I don't know. I wished I would have asked my dad more questions. I have a lot of regrets. I had so many missed opportunities that now I wished I had followed up in. But I think my dad was part of some sort of government situation. He talked about a building and showed a building to my mom when I was a kid, where they stored the flying saucers in the alien bodies. And we were driving through Dayton, Ohio at the time, 1965, and going right by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I peep up and I said, I want to see the flying saucer. And my dad didn't realize I was in the back seat reading a comic book, that I was listening. And he quickly changed the subjects. There are only special people get to go see them. Let's go get ice cream.
Wow.
But he was in the military in the 40s and 50s. So
that was my next question. Do you know what
he tried to bring it up throughout my childhood, and I was just too dense to follow up. I think he wanted me to probe and ask questions, but I think he was afraid to.
Wow.
So I always wondered.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting because, I mean, of course, at least with abductions, we all know that can be generational as well. But even with sightings, that's still a thing. That's fascinating.
We used to go visit my grandfather, and first thing we do is go to a scrapbook and pull out the clipping from 1919, a local Ohio newspaper, and he had seen a cigar-shaped object flying over the trees and over the housetops, and then quickly it zipped off and was out of sight. And he reported it and was published. I don't know where the scrapbook went, but I would love to have that clipping now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Danville, Ohio.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Danville or Mount Sterling. I think it was Danville, Ohio. Yeah.
It's fascinating. It is.
So,
any other questions before we move on to the next topic?
I just have like something in the chat here. That's probably a pretty good example of like plasma, and perhaps maybe some of like the I don't know what to call it, exhaust or byproduct. I don't know if it looked anything like that. Sometimes it can be kind of the video I linked, it looks a little misty, but also kind of can get a little wavy depending on the angle or how it's moving. So I don't know if that's maybe what the craft might have been emitting behind as a little trail behind it. But
am I looking at that little light bulb or what?
Oh, yeah, a little the purple. Yeah, the purple.
Yeah, that's just an example of plasma.
Yeah, that's like that's an example of like what plasma would look like. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe the stuff flowing out the back.
That's what it was.
Kind of mist-like, but it was multicolored. It was like rainbow colored. It was.
It was rainbow. Okay. It can be. It can be various colors depending on the circumstance.
That's interesting.
I assume it's probably some very sophisticated technology that was being used in the craft. So
the stuff that poured out looks solid.
Yeah.
It looked like you were cooking syrup or something.
Yeah.
That's what's so amazing is again, for me, you're the first person to have seen something like that. I mean, there were other reports of just something just looking like what you were saying.
A light bulb. Yeah, everybody else. And Arizona Historical Society has a model of what many people describe the craft as a V. It's a sharp V with pointy.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was, from my angle and seeing it come upon me from a distance, it was an obvious boomerang. It looked like a 1950s ashtray. They were into boomerang back then, and it looked a typical boomerang. Like
this is one of the recreations that someone made. But that's
yeah,
that's nothing like what you
that's
just
not what I
described.
saw at all.
Yeah.
It was not a V, it was a boomerang.
Yeah.
So why are they seeing it totally different than I am? Was it my angle that I was at? I don't know.
Well, you were certainly one of the closest ones to it.
Yeah,
It's just
That was-
fascinating.
that was neat.
Leaf,
Yes.
could you search on the internet for Hudson Valley, because there's one boomerang which was seen in Hudson Valley in '84. Maybe it looked a little bit like that. Maybe you can find it. It's boomerang shaped.
Oh,
Let's see.
can you pull it up?
Yeah. Hudson Valley. Well, yeah. Whoa, boy, there's a whole bunch of looks. Here, I'll just put this page up. Let me see here. Show this. So the Hudson Valley, this one's definitely the sharp edge. This one, I don't know if that's the right one, but these
I
two.
think this is the one with the colors.
Oh, this one down here?
Yeah,
That's getting
Yes.
closer. That's getting closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
that was seen in Hudson.
Wow, Hudson Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Where's? I have to look that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was in '84, '83, '84, I believe, or '82.
It
I don't
says
know which year.
1982.
Okay.
Good memory. Yeah, you've got all that stuff in your head. You're good at. You've got all the sightings. Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, there's also, look at this one. Hold on, let me bring this back up after I make it big. So
Oh,
that's another interesting one.
that's I like that. That front's very, very darn close to it.
Yeah, like this matte
Rounded,
gunmetal finish, the
right?
rounding, but all the lights are not what you saw. But nonetheless, it's close.
And it was more cutaway in the back.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like an extended back, but that
Well,
front and the roundness, that looks,
Yeah.
that's a good shape there.
So tell us this. So you watch it float away or glide away, and then just what's going through your head. And then you said you had just this upwelling of emotion.
This epiphany. I stood there crying. I was overwhelmed, but it was positive.
Mm-hmm.
And the closest thing I could describe it to was just gratitude. It was just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It was just tears pouring down my face. And it was like a friend was leaving. A friend just visited and a good friend was leaving. I felt so happy and grateful. It was 100% positive experience in my life. That moment, but it wasn't when it was right over me. It was as it was passing by, and that's when it was like, thank you. It was
right, because you were probably never going to see anything like that ever again.
Well, unless there's another coming. I think I did look to see if there's any more. But, I don't know what caused that. Was it me? Was it it? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't want to read too much into it.
Right.
But my takeaway for 26 years now has been 100% positive. It didn't burn me. It didn't put my eyes out. I didn't hit it with a rock. Maybe that's why. I don't know. For quite a while, as a nurse, I would work weekends so I could have a week off, because I love to go camping, and I've been camping all my life. And I had like a little camping shell in the back of my truck. If I went up in the summer, you can't camp in the desert; it's too darn hot. We go up to the mountains, so I'd put a shell on so the animals wouldn't get me. But if I camped in the desert, I would just be in the back of my truck and look at the sky. And a few years after this, I was going up into northern Arizona. I was going to meet some friends earlier that day. We were going later that day. I was there about 4 a.m. We were going to meet, around 6, 7, 8, and go hiking. But I got there early. I thought maybe I could take a nap or something. And I'm in northern Arizona. There's a trailhead parking lot. No one was there. It was a pretty big parking lot. And I'm driving in, got my headlights on, and I go into the parking lot and turn my truck around, and I'm backing in to a parking space. And right ahead of me, got my bright lights on. There are these three beings standing there. The tallest one was about 5.5 feet tall, and then there were two smaller ones exactly like it, but about 3.5 feet tall in front of it. And the engine's on. My foot's on the brake. It's about 30. They're about 30 feet away from me, maybe actually a tad less. I'm staring at them. They're staring at me. Head on. They look silverish, but there's little indentations a little bit in there. Look like suits, silver suits. They were kind of plump, almost not quite like a gingerbread man, but they weren't skinny. They were all solid, reflective, kind of a gray silver color, foot to the top of their head. And where the face would be, there was a slight indentation. And then there was a fabric that looked like ramen noodles, like a ramen noodle block. It was all woven over where the face was. And other than that, there was no antenna, there was no ears. And the hands, I don't remember. Because I'm staring at their faces, they're staring at me. And it's just kind of like a stare down. What do I do? Should I take off? What should I do? And then after about 20, 30 seconds, the two smaller ones at the exact same time turned to their right and started walking off. And their shoulders are probably, you can't see me in the camera, this big, about like mine.
Uh-huh.
And when they turned sideways, they looked like they were half an inch thick. And they walked like stick figures, like if you did a stick figure cartoon, and started walking off. And it's like, oh my God.
Well, let's take a look at what you drew here.
Me and my fifth 5-year-old art.
Hey, it's something. It's something for the viewers to see.
I drew that morning.
Yeah.
So
did you?
Yes. Yeah. So
now they definitely look like they're in some kind of suit, but you never could see through that ramen mesh.
No, it was a thick, tight mesh.
And
they could see me. There was a lot of bushes behind them, and it was weird because when I drove up from exactly behind them, and then went to their right side, came around, and then backed in, and then as I'm backing in, my headlights right on their face, and I was driving probably pretty fast. I drive, there's no one there. So maybe I caught them by surprise. My take on it, and again, I don't want to read too much into it, is that maybe the suits have this camouflage effect that if they stand sideways, they look tiny. Because had I backed in and they were all three standing sideways, I wouldn't have noticed them. They would have blended right in with the shrubs behind them.
That's fascinating.
Like cloaking from the side.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
But and again, the suits were silverish. Is that what you said?
Silverish, yes, silverish gray, and a little, kind of like the bottom of the Phoenix Lights craft. It was about 20% reflective and about 80% matte. And, I'm kind of into color, so I noticed that stuff, and kind of almost. It wasn't perfectly shiny like what Gore from. The Day the Earth Stood Still or something.
Oh yeah.
How he was nice and shiny and smooth. It was kind of pocked a little bit, little indentations and odd areas where something was like pushed in.
And so then again, the two smaller ones turned,
and they were walking off to the left, and to their right, to my left. And the big one just stood there and stared at me. It was almost like, and of course, I don't mean to read into it, it was like mom and the kids taking a walk. I mean, it's kind of how it looked.
Right.
And, here's the big one watching out as the little ones walked away. And it's like, put it in forward. I go the other way. And I was pulling out of there and I slammed on my brakes. And I thought, this is my second experience. Maybe I should go look for a craft. And I thought, nah, let's just get out of here. So that was it. So I had a very brief encounter. Maybe I should have gone, forward and looked and investigated.
Yeah.
I cut my losses right there and took off.
So you never saw the larger one move?
Nope. It saw me go.
Mm.
So what happened? What they do? I almost went back. But you know what? They weren't threatening at all.
Right.
But they also weren't welcoming. So I just kind of thought, I'll leave them be. Give them their space. They were there first.
Yeah.
So what was it? I don't know. It was a long time before I went back there, but I did go back and took some pictures of where they were. I saw nothing. There's a lot of shrub and a little rock. And
oh, and again, when you saw them, you had pulled in your headlights were on them.
Right on them. I parked right in front of them.
Okay.
Of all the parking spots.
And no one else was there?
And that's where I always parked anyway, because I've been there before. So
and no one else was there?
No one else. It was 4 a.m.
Oh, okay.
Dark.
And again, so to end it, you or end your experience, I should say, you backed out.
I put in. I had backed into the parking spot. I put it in forwards and just
gotcha.
sped off. There was an entrance and an exit, and so I went out a different way than when I came in. And stopped halfway.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm still putting it together in my head. When you backed in.
Mm-hmm. So I'm backing in, looking out in the rear view mirror, make sure I don't go off the parking lot. There was like cement blocks there, so you can't really go too far. And then looking forward there, my headlights on, there they are. I mean, I drove right by them and didn't see them until I was backing in, and my brights were right on them. 20, it couldn't have been 30 feet. That was been too far, probably more like 20 feet. It's just a parking lot.
Wow.
And they're in the parking lot too. I mean, there was parking spaces where they were standing.
Yeah.
So, so whatever, however much space there is between parking spaces.
Yeah.
I have to go back there and make
And there was a ship. And there was a ship or not?
I don't know. I stopped and thought, I should go look. And then I thought, well, maybe, that might not be a wise decision.
And then you decided to move forward. So if they were in front of you 20 feet, the two walk off.
Right.
And
you
have to go around it? Or
there was I mean, if I went forward, I would have run it over. And so I turned and went up the exit. It was kind of a U-shaped area in the parking lot. So I came in on one side and I left going out on the other side. So I could have run it over, but I didn't. I turned.
And as you drove away, you didn't have the same experience of gratitude and
The thing, it was so freaky when they turned sideways. Maybe if they were plump looking sideways, it wouldn't be so scary. But when they turned into like stick figures, and to see that stick figure like walking skeleton, that was freaky.
I could only imagine.
I would not make a good UFO investigator. I thought now I need to let this experience stay right at this point.
Yeah.
And what if I tried to say hello to them? They didn't look like they were waiting for me to come welcome them to planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I was just grateful they didn't do something to me. And they probably could have. I don't know. Again, they weren't welcoming, but they weren't threatening. But I kept my distance. So.
Right. And did you just drive back home?
Hell,
Because again, you went there. You went there for a camping?
With some friends, yes. And I was camping, and I was going to meet some friends at this location this morning, and we were going to visit. And I was on a couple-day camping trip, and I just took off. I stood up my friends. I did not go back. I think I called them, left a message on their cell phones, and I didn't continue camping. I just went home. That was the end of that little trip.
Did they ever learn why you stood them up?
Yes, I told them. They're like distant friends now.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, they I don't know if they knew about your Phoenix experience, but I was gonna say that Dave.
Heaven UFOs. You know what? I learned, certainly, tell your truth. Tell your truth and don't be ashamed. After what Fife Symington did and the intimidation I went through with that, I learned my lesson. I don't care what people think. I'm going to tell my truth. I'm going to stand in my truth. And if they want to make faces when I walk away, go for it.
Right. Because you know what you saw.
I know what I saw. And you know what? The cemeteries are full of people with incredible stories. And I don't want to be one of those. I was just in the hospital this week. I don't want to take my stories with me. I want to leave them here for whatever good it might do. And maybe somebody else saw something similar, and maybe they'll feel better.
Yeah, and thank you again for being with us today, since you were in the hospital just a few days ago.
I'm passing a kidney stone right now.
Oh, well. If you need to pause, let us know.
That's okay. Takes my mind off of it.
Because I know that cannot feel good.
It was, yes, not pleasant.
Or I'm told that cannot feel good. I'd hope I never have to experience that. But.
Drink lemonade, yes.
Yeah. Any questions before we move on to?
Yes, I have one. I can remember the Ariel school kids. You know the Ariel case with the children in Africa? And I remember one girl saying, like, it looked so incredibly thin, she said, the being. And the other one said it too, that perhaps when they turn, or maybe they can cloak or something, but it was also described. So it's something you see in other cases as well. And there is also a case, I send a link in the chat, if you can open it, Lee.
Yeah.
Because we're always looking for similarities in cases.
Okay. Sure.
Because that's in essence what you have to do, find similarities. This was a nurse, so we keep it in the same area. So this was a nurse in Canada. And she opened the window, and it was in the morning, I believe early morning, and she saw this saucer hanging there with two beings inside.
Wow.
And she noticed that one looked at her, so they had eye contact, but there were no eyes. There was some kind of fluffy material in front of the eyes. So she looked, into something undescribable. And I believe there was a patient on the bed who saw it also.
Wow.
But it's an amazing case, and it was in 1970. I don't know when was your experience?
This would have been about 2005.
Okay, so it's much later. But this is a nice case, and you were speaking about some kind of visor-like material. So.
Yeah, it's towards the end of the bottom. It describes like the mesh in front of their
yes.
the last paragraph. So at the very bottom, I think.
Oh yeah, couldn't see his face. It was covered. Here we go, by a darkish material that looks softer than the rest of his suit. Okay, that's a similarity.
That is similar.
Yeah.
The suit, which looked like all one piece, except it indented just a bit where this mesh thing was. So it looked like it was made of something else and kind of stuck in.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And dimples all over the suit. Slight dimples.
Oh.
Not not like the Phoenix Lights.
Right.
It's odd, and there was no pattern to it. It just wasn't. It wasn't nice and smooth.
That's fascinating. You always wonder if, I don't know. There's tons of things to wonder about. Were they cloaked and then their cloaking device malfunctioned? Or, gosh, it's such an amazing experience. And
I saw it so clearly with my headlights on it.
Yeah.
I had them on brights, so it was just so freakish to see the stick figure walk.
Mm-hmm.
And they at the same time they turned to their right, and at the same time they were walking away. And it wasn't like
a military procession that
yes,
they walk with their feet and everything. And that's another thread, that a common thread, where when there's more than one, they all move at the same time. They like have it's like they think at the same time and they move at the same time. And obviously with a lot of sightings, the craft do the same thing too. There's several craft and they all move in unison. And when there's contact or sightings like you had, there's that common thread of them all moving at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
Sorry.
What were they? Where are they from?
Yeah, I know. It also reminds me of I want to say Caspian has. Oh, Caspian, one of the moderators that we have, who's also an experiencer, and since he was 5 years old, he tells stories about being on the craft where it was telepathic, but when he was locked into that and they opened the telepathic part, he would talk about how their thoughts were instantaneous. And he said, like, with my thoughts, I would ruminate. It would just sit there and I'd try to figure out what I'm going to say before it happens. With theirs, I could see their thought happen and they say it. And so it makes me think of that. Like they know they're going to leave. So they both go bloop and they walk away.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah. It's just a fascinating thing to think about, with us and what kind of, I want to say powers or things, sixth sense that we supposedly have, but we just don't practice it, which also makes me think of you. You've practiced remote viewing as well and other things, but we'll talk about that in a minute because you also had another camping experience.
Yes. This is my last camping trip. After 50 years, I was like, no more. I'm just not going out in the desert anymore. And this one is a two-parter. And the second part, I barely got away alive, I think. This was about 2015, around then. And it was a beautiful, I think it was spring day. And so I was going to camp in the desert. When I camp in the desert, I don't have my camping shell in the back of the truck. So it was around 2 a.m. There was this, I'm in, I won't tell you where in the desert, and I'll tell you why later. A beautiful full moon. It was around 2 o'clock on the horizon, and it was so bright you could actually read by it. Gorgeous night, gorgeous weather, lots of stars. I'm in the back of the bed of the truck, and just looking at the stars. At that time, I was working night shift. So when I would go camping, I would stay on that sleep cycle and sleep days and be up all night. It was easier than to flip my sleep back and forth. Yeah. So I'm up nights and then sleep early in the morning or into the morning. So that's why I'm up all night. And right behind my truck, I had a little campfire light. So I had my light going, and I think I was eating pistachios and throwing the pistachios shells over the side of the truck. And this thing walked about 4 feet behind the tailgate of my truck. It was about 8 feet tall, had an oval head, had like a long tube from about here down that hung down about 4 feet, came to a point that was very close to its abdomen. It was very, very thin. I saw it sideways because it was walking from west to east. I'm out on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. It had about a foot long neck, very skinny neck. Um, the long arms, the elbows were by its hips, so the elbows were lower than ours. Long legs. I couldn't make out the feet because the moon is behind it shining, so I'm seeing it mostly as a silhouette. And as it walked like it was walking in water. So if you're in a swimming pool and you try to walk, it's such a struggle. It looked like it was struggling and taking every bit of energy it had just to take a step. It almost looked like it was hurt, and its head was hung down. And it got right behind my truck and stopped. And then this bizarre neck turned 90 degrees and looked right at me. It barely turned its shoulders, but the whole neck and the whole face was looking at me. I'm looking at it. And then the head turned back. It stayed there for a few seconds, and then it just walked on. It just left. And I'm thinking, is it going to come back? Is it circling around? Is it, going to catch me? Whatever. I get in the truck, off I go. Camping equipment flying out of the back of the truck, and I take off and go home. So I was afraid to go back for months, and several months later, in the daytime, I did go back, and I could find the exact spot because there was this little pile of pistachio nut shells that I had been throwing over the side. And, those things will last forever, especially in the desert.
Yeah.
So I looked around the area, and, there's nothing. It's been several months. It just took that long for me to get to get the bravery to go back.
Yeah.
It was such a nice day. I thought, well, I'll just go hiking around. So I drove down this dirt road about 2 miles, and I parked my truck, and I got out and I heard all of these engines, like diesel engines, like earth movers and dump trucks and backhoes, and the beep, 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 like when a truck goes backwards so you don't, run over somebody.
Yeah.
But there was nothing out there. There was some small hills or something, but there was no one out there. And I actually got in the truck and drove around a little bit, trying to see where all this noise was coming from. Thinking maybe there's some construction going on. There was nothing. So I go back to that same spot, and I get out of the truck, and beep, 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 and like a dump truck dumping dirt and shaking that the barrel or whatever, the scoop, trying to get all the dirt out. I could clearly hear it. I heard like 10, 15 truck diesel engines going, but there was nothing anywhere. So I thought, what is going on? So I get on my hands and knees and I put my ear to the ground, and it was all coming from underground, out in the middle of nowhere. I thought, well, that's odd. Who's digging, out here? And as I stood up in front of my truck, there were 2 huge white trucks parked there that weren't there less than 1 minute ago. And they had onyx black glass, huge tall trucks. I don't know what make they were. Big, like pickup trucks. And they're both pointing right at me. I thought, I didn't see those just a minute ago. And they're so shiny. It actually hurt to look at them. The paint almost glowed. The chrome was just reflecting the sun. It was burning my eyes. Hard to see that. I thought, that's odd. You're out in the desert for 1 minute and everything's covered in dust. These were beyond showroom shiny. I thought, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be hearing this, whatever's going on underground. So I get back in my truck and just going to leave. And then behind me are 2 more trucks that weren't there just a minute ago. Exact same thing, big white trucks, big brand new shiny black tires, glowing almost, hard to look at. So I thought, I'm in trouble. So, try to act nonchalant and get in my truck. This is probably 2 or 3 in the afternoon, a nice sunny day. So I get in the truck and back out of that area and go down the dirt road. There's a few miles to go to get to an actual paved road. So I go there. I keep looking in my rearview mirror. They're not following me. So I go, okay, I'm going to be okay. So when I get to the paved road, there I can go to the right or to the left, north or south. There's two more trucks there, one facing north, one facing south, waiting for me. And it's like, oh my God, what have I done now? Is this it? Is this the end of me? So I get on the road, and the one I was heading south, so the one facing south takes off right after me. The other one turns around and comes after me too. So I'm driving down this 2-lane road, 90 miles an hour. The one's right on my bumper, and the other one's trying to pass me. And I'm swerving, both lanes to keep the one behind me, and the one from passing me, thinking maybe it's going to run me off the road. And this
That
one
sounds like a scary situation.
Oh my God. This is why it's my last camping trip. So finally, about 9 or 10 miles down the road, I've never gone back. There was an exit, and it looked like a house out there, maybe an old farmhouse or something. I don't know if anybody even lived in it or not. And I just went for it. I thought, maybe there's someone there. Maybe they can help. Maybe I don't know what to do. I don't think I can keep outrunning these two trucks. And when I took the exit, they both at the same time slowed down, made a U-turn, and went back.
There it is. There's the unison thing again.
Absolutely in unison. They did do that. Shiny, shiny things. So when they left, and I got back on the road, and I head home. And of course, by the time I get home, I keep thinking there's going to be a bullet flying, or there's going to be people there. There wasn't. I heard nothing about this after this. I never heard one thing, but I kept my mouth shut until recently. So maybe there's going to be some trouble. And my concern is, maybe it's something with the government. Maybe they're doing something for national security underground. And if that's it, I don't want to give away a secret location that, might be saving us from, China, Russia, from whatever. But also, it's just 2 miles from where I saw that 8-foot ant thing. And why are they chasing David and not it? Is there government being compound underground being built or something, and I stumbled on? They could have easily have taken me out in the middle of nowhere, and I never would have been found, and they didn't do that. So I'm feeling some kindness there.
Yeah, it seems like, okay, so far he's only heard something. He hasn't seen anything. We can scare him away. But
Slights guy.
Yeah, but what is very questionable is is the two trucks appeared behind you first. Is that correct?
In front of me.
In front of you.
Yeah, when I had my ear down on the ground, that's when they appeared, and I didn't see it. Where did they come from? I don't know. Quickly. I mean, less than a minute.
Yeah, and okay, so the two trucks appeared in front of you.
Two in front of me.
And then you looked, and two were behind you.
And two were behind me. When I turned around to get in my truck, I saw the two behind me then.
And then when you bolted, you had to go around them, or they were...
They never followed me. And I was
driving. They weren't in your way.
No, they weren't in my way. They were, maybe 40 feet.
Yeah.
From me, but they're out in the desert. I mean, there's not like roads or anything there.
Yeah.
And so I didn't see them move. I don't know what they did. I kept looking for them in my rearview mirror to see if they were chasing me, and they weren't. Yeah. But then when I get to a paved road, there's two more there. So that would be a total of 6 trucks. They all look the same. They all bizarrely luminous.
Okay, and just to confirm, you're saying trucks, were they trucks or SUVs? Like trucks. Okay, because like a truck with a bed in the back that's fascinating, because normally you'd think Men in Black are driving black SUVs or whatever, but these were trucks.
These were trucks.
That's wild. And incredibly
big,
clean,
big trucks.
Big. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were like freakishly big, and you know, I tried to look like at a tundra or something like that. It was bigger than that, so, but I don't know what make it was,
Right.
and so bizarrely shiny.
Yeah.
And I kept noticing, you know, why are they so shiny? I mean,
And
that's
how
so
could they be so shiny?
Pardon?
Yeah, and how can they be so shiny?
Out in the desert, yeah, and not even a dirt road; it was like a dust road. So I don't know what they were, and the tires were shiny, the tires were clean. I don't know. I don't
Tell
know
me
what
that
Holograms.
it could be. I mean,
hologram chasing you for several miles down the freeway or highway, I should say. I mean, I can only imagine.
someone had suggested it was something else, and it gave me the image of a truck.
Okay, and then going back to the sound you heard, you said you heard it as clear as day, yet when you put your ear to the ground, you could tell it was coming from the ground, but it didn't sound muffled when you first heard it?
It was so loud. I mean, I could clearly make out that it was diesel engines. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, ray guns or something that you hear in a science fiction movie. It was diesel engine, very loud and very clear. It couldn't have been that deep underground.
Yeah.
But I listened to see where it was coming from, and it was obviously coming from underground because it wasn't anywhere else around. I looked.
Yeah.
There was a small hill nearby, and actually there was an area, an indentation that looked, if something V-shaped crashed in the ground, it would make an indentation just like that. And the rocks actually looked like they were burnt. And I had been to that area almost 40 years ago, and this looked like a crash site. In fact, I used to call it the crash site. It looked exactly the same then as it did as it did when I saw it just a few years ago. And there's trees growing up in this place now. It looks like something fell into it and burned the rocks. And that was very close to where this was going on.
Well, and your story reminds me a bit of Rem or Adam. I want to say Rob Schneider, but it's not. That's the actor, but the guy that worked on
Philip Schneider, I think his name was. Yeah, the Dumbs. Yeah, seems like seems like there might have been construction, operation, or something happening with a potential underground base, which which I think Philip was pretty much claiming that there's several hundred in the United States, kind of spread off across states. So very, very interesting.
Well, what was that being?
Oh,
Why was that about 2 miles from where I heard the digging a few months later when I went back? I mean, I could just write it off as a government thing. They're doing something, and I'm fine with that, and I support the country doing whatever it needs to do. But why was there this 8-foot ant thing in that area?
Potentially, I guess the overall idea is that there's some either collaboration or some type of technologies that that these beings are connected to. So they might actually like influence the beings or potentially utilize the technology, or the beings are drawn to the technologies that they're using, or could be. I think it's a two-way street here is what's pretty much happening at these bases.
Yeah, it's and that's such the frustrating thing about ufology. It's just we can only speculate because they've kept a lid on this, and it's just testimonials that you hear.
I mean, I've been camping for 50 years. That was my last time I've ever gone camping. That did it for me.
Wow. Well, that's too bad.
I'm not going out there again. I go out of the way to never even drive close to it. Right. I've wondered about going back. I thought about it, and go back to that spot. I know exactly where it is.
And you're not going to tell us.
Because it might be national security, and I don't want a bunch of YouTube people making selfies with a 6-pack of beer,
right,
going on out there.
Yeah,
something serious is going on there, and it
Yeah.
definitely deserves respect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There have been plenty of cases where, well, I shouldn't say plenty. I definitely know of one, but cases where people go out where other things have happened and they get hurt or they don't return. It makes me think of this one case, and I can't remember whether it was in America or not, but a YouTuber type of guy thought he had seen something on top of a mountain. It was, I'm trying to remember where it was, but it was on top of a snow-capped mountain, and it looked like a Yeti or a Bigfoot. And he kept going back, but then he was turned away by government vehicles, guys with machine guns, and apparently later after that sighting, the road was closed off to go up there, and they had the military had put an installation up there, like, I don't know, it could have been radar or some kind of tower, but he kept poking and poking and poking, and then I think he died eventually. But little things, you never know. So you're doing people a service. But are you able to give us like the area of Arizona, like the northeastern,
southwestern United States,
the southwestern United States?
I will leave it there.
Yeah.
They easily could have taken me out, and they didn't.
Right.
And I have. I respect that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, they gave you a chance. Again, as far as they know, you had only heard something, and you definitely had your ear to the ground, so they knew that they had to do something and scare you off.
I'm glad that's all they did.
It's. I mean, they could have done worse. Like you said, you were driving like 90 miles an hour down the road, one behind, one's trying to get to the side of you, but you're veering.
Yeah.
And driving serpentine.
That's a nurse. I'm a nurse, and I'm a happy nurse because of the Phoenix Lights. I mean,
yeah.
You don't think of stuff like this. And it was like, this is it. I'm gonna die. I thought this is my last day. This is it. They got me. And I mean, that's scary.
Yeah.
That was very, very scary. I never camped again. That's something I've done for 50 years. And to go, I'll go miles out of my way so I don't even go close to that area.
Well, haven't you thought of just going camping in a different area?
I do.
You're like
the skinny.
You're just done, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to go to some national park. Oh no. Well, now we got David Paulides and the missing, so you don't want to do that.
It would be me they would get, I think. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. This has been enough.
I bet. Well, okay. Any more questions before we move? What's that?
I would just love some answers.
Yeah.
Of
course.
Well, do you think that the experiences are related in the sense that you had this experience in '97? Maybe it opened some kind of other reality. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like different, so you're more sensitive
I wonder.
Other realities that other people are not sensitive to.
And I've been open to other realities. I mean, since I was a child, and we were raised in a form of Surat Shabda yoga, which practiced out of the body travel. It's a part of the religion. And so anyway, I started that when I was in 8th grade and back in the 60s. So we've always been kind of open to spirit beings and teachers and masters and things like that would come in dreams. It was just a part of what I was taught. So, but this stuff was physical.
Yeah.
This wasn't etheric, or I was definitely in the body. So who knows? Maybe so. Maybe I'm drawn to, or they're drawn to me, or I'm drawn to them. That's a good point. That's a very valid point.
Yeah, and I thought of that as well, but it's hard to know the connection. I mean, because there's plenty of people that we hear about that do have these experiences once, twice, maybe 3 times in their full lifetime. But usually they don't seem to have like these kind of backgrounds, like your Silva mind control that you practiced and remote viewing and the sort. But it's been 90 minutes. But if you're okay with at least your final and very interesting childhood experience with the Easter Bunny.
This was so bizarre.
Or a bunny.
It was an Easter bunny. And I have kept my mouth shut up about this my entire life. I have not shared this with anybody until just recently. since I retired, I worked weekends so I could go camping and have these experiences. I missed so many seminars and events. And now that I'm retired and have weekends free, I'm starting to attend a lot. And we had the latest UFO Congress was in Mesa a few months ago. And I went to that, and I went to an experiencers meeting, and 2 people spoke up that had something so similar to what happened to me that I spoke up to. And I've since now been online, and I've run into about 20 others that have had almost the same experience I had, with some little differences with different beings. But I was on my grandmother's farm in southern Ohio. We're out in the middle of nowhere. It's on a gravel road. We had no indoor plumbing. We had a well in the backyard. The bathroom, you had to go out the back door, across the yard, down the hill, and we had an outhouse. So we're just incredibly remote. And we had some cows and corn and chickens running through the yard. And one day, I was probably about 5 years old. So this would have been about 1959. A nice sunny day. I was on the porch. The chickens were having a good time. And all at once, they freaked out and went running. They ran under the house. They ran into the cornfield. They ran down the dirt road. Gone. And including the rooster. And chickens aren't chicken. If we get a snake in the yard, they'll peck it to death and eat it. And once when I was a kid, we had a stray dog coming on the property, and the chickens went after it and chased it away. These things were scared and bolted. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? That scared me. And I looked, I was on the front porch, and I was looked by the front of the house, and here comes what looks like a stuffed Easter bunny. Kind of a goofy stuffed Easter bunny. It was a blue and white and had pink ears, slightly dirty, and was kind of leaning off to the left. And it was walking like someone would put their hand behind a stuffed toy and make it walk, to play with a kid or with an animal. And it spoke to me, and it said it needed help. Would I go with it and help? And if I would help it, it would play with me, and we could go have some great adventures. And probably I would have gone, except the chickens. The chickens reacted so much. I was afraid. I was like, no, I'm not going to go with you. And I kept trying to, oh, come on, we'll have fun. Let's go. And it was bouncing around. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Good luck. And it backed away, kind of going backwards, and went around the side of the house. It was out of sight. And I wasn't about to get off the porch, but I wanted to see where it was going. And again, the chickens were still gone. So I leaned around the side of the house, and it had turned around. And so I saw the back of what looked like a toy bunny, but behind it, it looked like a dinosaur. It looked like a 2.5-foot dinosaur with the spikes going down its back and down to the tip of the tail. It was kind of pig-like. It was fat, like you'd think of a fat dinosaur with 4 legs. But the head was either stuck in the back of the stuffed bunny, or someone just recently said maybe it was morphing from, a form of a bunny into its normal body shape. I couldn't see the head. I kind of figured it was stuck in there, and it was waddling off. And that's where the waddle came. I guess it wasn't trying to play. It waddled. It was fat, and was walking off. I'm thinking, what the hell? So I run in the house, and I get my grandmother. My grandmother was born in 1889. She had seen everything. She took it very seriously. I mean, it was like, where is it? And she's running off the porch and looked around, wouldn't let me come with her. She looked everywhere and couldn't find it. But it was like another hour before the chickens came back. They were absolutely terrified. And so what was it? The 2 other guys And again, I wouldn't be saying this right now, because what a crazy thing to say. I'd never told my friends. I never thought UFO or anything, but the people, the two guys at the UFO Congress, also from Ohio, had the Easter Bunny trying to go off with him. But theirs were more animated, more cartoon-like than what I saw. But I'm out in the middle of nowhere. We got one channel on TV, and it was fuzzy as heck. Only when it would be rainy and there'd be clouds, we would get what's called skip from the TV stations, with the TV reception before cable. You guys are all cable guys. And the TV waves would skip on clouds, and you could get a clear picture. So
Right.
I wasn't able to watch cartoons. So a cartoony thing didn't mean anything to me, but a stuffed toy did. And it was a little dirty. And we used to have people drive by, and they'd stop their car and leave sacks of food and sacks of clothes out for us, and then drive off. They were afraid of us because we looked so poor. So a dirty, goofy little Easter bunny would have been naturally what I would have felt comfortable with, not something super nice that I'd have to worry about keeping clean. So,
And when you looked around the corner, you still see the Easter Bunny, and then you see this thing waddling. Is it kind of holding it and waddling away?
it looked as if the face was stuck in the back of the bunny.
Oh,
So it looked like it was holding it with its snout or its mouth or in its teeth. It was a plump little pig-like,
yeah.
fat, waddly dinosaur, a greenish, grayish dinosaur. So the head would have been lower. I could see the back and the spines. The head would have been a little bit lower, so I couldn't see what it was doing to the back of the bunny, but I saw the back of the bunny. It just looked like a stuffed toy bunny. But was the head stuck in it, or was it? I don't know.
And how long was the tail? Oh, okay. So it was like pig-sized, had a kind of long tail, and like a stegosaurus had the spine going down the back.
I think the spine is that the one with the it had
Yeah, I think it's a stegosaurus.
like one row of spines.
Yeah.
Going down, they went all the way down the tail, and the
Mhm.
tail was dragging on the ground. Did it leave dirt? I don't know.
Nice.
Did it leave a trail of dirt? I wished I would have looked, but I was a kid. And then my
Wow.
grandmother's running up and down. So
Yeah, let's see
I
this.
took it very seriously. And you don't imagine stuff out there.
Oh no, yeah. So here's a stegosaurus.
I guess I should look. Very similar to that. The rear end, the tail went right from the back right onto the ground.
Okay.
It wasn't floating up in the air like that. But the back plates were a little pointier than that. But it was on the lines of that.
Okay. That's
on the idea of that. Yeah. It was a dinosaur. It was a dinosaur in Athens County, Ohio.
and it was manipulating a little bunny and trying to get you to go with it.
Yes. Wow,
That is
crazy.
that-
Honestly, if those people had not spoken up, I wouldn't be talking about it to you.
And you have also thrown that story on Reddit, and you got a lot of replies with people having yeah.
We also have an experiencer on this series that also had a Easter Bunny experience, Daniel.
Yeah,
and
he actually replied to you in your post.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Oh,
So yeah, it does seem to be a common theme. And one thing I would like to say is that there's a great experiencer and author, Carla Turner, who talks a lot about the perception of what, let me rephrase that, what these beings can do in terms of like consciousness and influencing our perception. And she talks about this idea of like these filters that they can actually influence, like I mentioned, our perception, where my speculation is that there's probably some type of reptilian being, generally speaking, because they are very, it's textbook what you described, where they, oh, I'm hurt. Can I get some help? That's very textbook. There, there's some motive behind it. I'm glad that you said no. The sense of like, the animals kind of picked up on that negative energy, because they do generally seem to be not really pleasant beings. I'm from speaking personally from my own experiences and just some other experiences I've read about and watched and things. So it seems that potentially that there was some type of being that, over, your just, I think your sensitivity to the being kind of like came through, and that's why maybe you perceived it being like this kind of, boyish, like, reptile in a sense. But yeah, I'd recommend just looking into Carla Turner and just seeing how she kind of talks about these beings. They're very different the way that they operate, and they can kind of manipulate our perception and things. But it seems similar to Daniel's experience in a bit, and a lot of other experiencers. Yeah.
It was interesting on Reddit. It depends on the age of the person when they were a child. One guy said it was Captain Crunch that tried to get him to go with him.
Yep.
Others, it was Power Rangers trying to get them to go.
Yeah.
All of these people, not one of them went with him. So I always wondered what happened to the kids that did go.
Nah.
Story was
Manipulation. Yeah, whatever that may be. Yeah.
Yeah, because you had a lot of. I'm looking at your at your post on Reddit, and I'll put a link down in the description when we get this. But yeah, 145 replies and lots of people talking about similar experiences. And like you said, it makes you wonder what happened to the kids that did go with the little bunny.
I put it under 2 locations. One place got over 200. One on aliens and one on something else.
Yeah, the aliens got 145, but yeah, you got quite a response from both.
Yeah, it's weird how they're able to like identify like key archetypes, I guess you could say, about our perception. Like some it might be Captain Crunch, some it might be more of like a like holiday-esque Easter bunny, or from your own perspective, more of like a kind of like a toy, a bunny. So it's very weird how you can see these similar archetypes of like a being trying to ask for help, and it just kind of changes what the perception of that like same being is. Very different than what we're used to, like actually just like seeing things concretely with our eyes, like that's this, but they're actually able to seems to be able to manipulate like perception subjectively based on your own like experiences and timeline and things. Just very very out there, but consistent when it comes to experiences and things.
Why do they need the child's permission? I mean, they could have just grabbed me. I guess maybe. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah, very. So there's the nature, I guess you could say, of free will and consent, and I think it really is like super big picture, like cosmic and things relating to consciousness, where there might be, just as a rough analogy, you can't. And this actually ties to a lot of like mysticism about like what a vampire is, and you have to invite the vampire into your house for it to actually take advantage of you. That's just like a very rough analogy, where they may be able to like manipulate and get some things, but what they really desire or what they really need, they actually need to get you to consent to it, as if you're to be treated, to relate it back to your field too. And like my field's in psychology, you can't treat somebody in like physically or for mental health unless you sign a consent form. So very personified in a way, but it almost seems like that notion applies cosmically in some of these other odd phenomena in terms of consciousness and things. Very, very interesting. That's like one of the reasons that drove me into like, figuring out about things and just kind of like discovering my own experiences and things. There seems to be some things that they can just take, but specific things you need to like say, okay, here's, I signed here, or, there's my verbal consent.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very strange.
And it seems to also depend on the being, like, well, maybe, but like with the Greys, of course, you have all these abductions. They're not asking for consent; they're just taking. But yeah, with very well said, Adam. And to add to it, it reminds me of recently the channeled information called the Allies of Humanity from James. I'll put the description down below, but it's very similar, where they say that there's a group of beings here that are doing their thing, but they can't just come in and take over the earth and the resources. They have to get consent, in a sense. So we have to say it's okay. So the idea, and this is of course not nuts and bolts, but this is just speculation from testimonials and such. But the idea is they are giving, like, say, our military and our leaders trinkets of technology, and saying, if we help you, you should come with us, and so forth. So there's that idea that's going on as well, that our military has already taken the bait, the dark military, and that and then the benevolent ETs are speculating. Well, not speculating, but from what is said in some channel material, but benevolent ETs are saying, hey, you guys can go into your own future with your own technology on your own. You don't need help. Don't take the help, because if you do that, you're giving consent. And from the Allies of Humanity, these benevolent beings are saying, we did it. We said we'll take the help, and we were locked into this malevolent group for many, who knows how long. But we finally got out of the cycle of that, and we're able to get away. And now we're here to try and help you. So, I mean, it's speculation, it's woo, it's we don't know, but that's another thread that is very common. The consent, to get consent of us or a being, allows them to do what they want.
If you don't want to deal with the genie, don't rub the lamp.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty wild. But yeah, so I think that's about all we have. I mean, I would love to go. It's almost been 2 hours, but I would love to go into just knowing about. Oh, well, real quick though, you remote viewed the place. You saw.
Yes.
You had the insectoid experience. You've learned. Give us a brief of a history of your learning how to remote view, and then tell us about that experience.
Started off young with Surat Shabda Yoga, a form of Ek Onkar, and there's a group that westernized it and made it very accessible to many people, called Ekankar. And I was raised in that. Also, I got involved in Silva mind control when I was young. It's now called the Silva method, but they pretty much practice the same, going into alpha level. And they have a small part of it into remote viewing. But once you got those keys and once you got those tools, it's easy. And I practice still with several others. And we get together and do locations, and we're very accurate. We just recently found somebody's lost husband. You're able to locate his body to the very foot of where it was. They just found him in the desert. But
wow.
So I went.
It's like, okay, you're bringing on a lot of stuff here. But I'm sorry. You know what? Maybe we'll have you back on for some of that. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Maybe get our group on or something. I tried going back to the location where I heard the digging, and it was like 2 doors slammed right in front of me, and a loud "no," this scary voice pulled me right back. And it's like, oh my gosh, something at another level. I've never had that. I've been doing this for years, 40 some years, doing remote viewing, using those same techniques. And I don't know, it's protected by something more than someone with a gun.
I've heard of that happening as well in some parts of the Pentagon. Some people have tried to remote view some parts of the Pentagon, and they said that they hit a wall or were pushed back, or there's something strange there. I want to say the same with the moon, but yeah, there's similar things with the moon. I've heard people going into the moon and seeing the beings, but the beings look up at them and they felt like, oh crap, I should probably leave now. And I want to say that Russell Targ, I'm sure you know his name, or do you know his name, Russell Targ?
I have heard that name.
Russell Targ worked with Hal Puthoff in remote viewing at Stanford, Stanford Institute. So I think it was Russell Targ that said, and I could be wrong, people can correct me down in the comments, but that said that it was either Ingo Swann or Pat, I forget his last name, but Pat was one of the other top remote viewers, almost were taken by beings when he remote viewed either the moon or one of the other moons in the solar system, either in Jupiter or Saturn or Mars, I can't remember, but Russell Targ, I remember he was being interviewed by, I want to say it was Stephen Greer, but he started talking about how Pat had told him, you better be careful, because if they take your consciousness, you're not coming back home. But there's so far no evidence that we know of that ever happening. But these guys were doing remote viewing for the government for 20 years.
Yeah.
So who knows what they know.
It was Ingo that told me to take Silva mind control back in the 70s.
So you've met a lot of people.
I've met
and Ingo,
Brad Steiger. And then Ingo was also involved in Surat Shabda yoga for a bit. So I knew him actually through that. I knew nothing about all the remote viewing that he did with the organization. I wasn't involved in any of that. But,
yeah, I don't know if you've ever read Ingo Swann's Penetration book.
I read his early stuff back.
Okay. Yeah, his Penetration book goes on a little bit about that remote viewing and being taken to different places. That's where, I don't know if you ever heard the guy's name, Axelrod, but his name's become popular in Twitter and stuff.
Oh,
but yeah, nonetheless, that's funny that I forgot that you met Ingo.
yeah.
and oh, you know what? We still have a few minutes before we hit 2 hours, but tell us your story about meeting J. Allen Hynek.
Oh no. I need to write a book on missed opportunities. I knew he was over at Brad Steiger's house. Brad lived in Scottsdale and I was in Phoenix. And we were friends also through Surat Shabda yoga, because he had written a book with Paul Twitchell. He wrote several and ghosted as an author for Paul. And I knew Paul. I was quite young, but and he taught out of the body travel. And my family and I were following a lot of his writings. So I used to hang out with Brad. And once I was over to his house, and I spent 4 hours with Hynek in Brad's living room. For some reason, Brad was busy doing something else. And I knew Hynek was into UFOs. I couldn't care less about UFOs. So I just ignored him. And I was flipping through magazines and, pacing around. And all this time I could have had a conversation with him, and I just let it go. It's like, oh, UFOs, that's not interesting,
Little did you know.
Isn't that? Oh, I wish I had opened my mouth. See, there you are. Don't sit on anything. Talk. Talk by and strike on opportunities when they arise. That's my old age wisdom I'm going to pass on to you young people.
Great. Thank you. We'll take it. That's funny. Well, are there any last thoughts from Adam or Rem?
No. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you guys
and
for
tell your story. And, we have had a lot of people talking. And I think what's important is don't look at how something appears, but what does it do to you? You know what I mean? So often some experiences shape you, and your experiences certainly shape you. And I think that's what we should look at, and not what did it have 2 eyes, 3 eyes, did it have 4 legs, or something like that.
Right.
But what does it do to people? Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
my opinion. Yeah.
Right, Adam.
Yeah, really. Thanks for sharing your experiences and really coming out. I know it can be difficult, really, just to open up, but I'm really glad that you're able to share your experience about the Phoenix Lights and just having that really, literally, like just right there. That really just that type of viewpoint to it is really super. I think clarifying
Yeah.
for a lot of the misinterpretation of some of the shape of the craft and things, and just really having that really close hand perspective is really really awesome. And yeah, I think really what Rem said is really right on the money. Really, it's there's definitely correlations between experiences, but there does seem to be a very almost at this point in time in our like scientific library, like unquantifiable nature of the phenomena. And I really really value anybody who's willing to like share their experiences and their perspective, because it's difficult, very difficult to share. But yeah, thanks again. Thanks for sharing.
Thank
Yeah. And David, do you have any takeaways for people that have seen or experienced any of the things like you have?
You know what? And maybe I could have approached them more. But who knows? I might have a very different story, or might not have been present to tell my story. I don't know what their intentions were, but they didn't harm me. And maybe I'm one of the lucky ones. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. Have your experience and please share it with somebody. And if you're afraid of retaliation, share it anonymously. But we need to hear from everybody. And maybe we'll get some relationships between my experiences and yours and everybody else's.
Right. Thank you very much. Yeah. And as for all people that experience these things or have their sightings, I mean, you know what you saw, stick to it, and just tell the truth, tell your truth. And that's all that needs to happen for you. So with that, thank you so much, David, for being with us. Stick around for just a moment. We do want to say goodbye offline, but I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and we will see you again on another interview. Thank you.